Well, no series of lectures on the human reproductive system would be complete without a discussion of the menstrual cycle, particularly with respect to hormones that control it. First of all, we notice here there's FSH. But let's go back to our childhood first. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. It is from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Remember that gland that hangs down from your primitive brain, that's located approximately above the roof of the mouth and about the center of your mouth? Anyway, follicle stimulating hormone at puberty stimulates the ovaries to produce estrogen and the testes to produce testosterone. Now, we've been getting both men and women, both get, or boys and girls I should say, get that hormone, each of those hormones from their adrenal glands, but in low levels. Follicle stimulating hormone stimulates specific tissues, the ovaries and the testes, to produce high levels of testosterone in boys from the testes and estrogen in girls from the ovaries. And estrogen, by the way, is synthesized from testosterone. I thought you might find that interesting. And that causes secondary sex characteristics to develop. That is when boys and girls become men and women. So the beard in men, the deeper voice, the different body shape in women, the development of breasts and pubic hair and all those things that we associate with puberty. Once that happens, then in women, menstruation can begin. In men, testosterone is produced normally throughout life, and sperm production is continuous throughout life, and there's an awful lot of it every day. In women, the eggs were produced, as we mentioned, in the 8th month of being in their mother's womb. 250,000 to 300,000 eggs were produced, and then they start to die. Each one at a time, can mature to about 400 or 500 eggs in a woman's lifetime, can mature at about the center of the menstrual cycle, at about day, say 28 to 32 days, day 14, 15, or 16 is generally when ovulation occurs. What happens, if you'll notice this chart, is the FSH jumps up a little bit, and this is where ovulation occurs. And notice up here at the top of this graphic, they show the distribution or the development of the follicle and the corpora luteum. So there's the follicle development stage, and then there's the corpora luteum development stage if pregnancy happens. Luteinizing hormone, the blue line, however, makes a great big jump right about the middle of the menstrual cycle, and it causes this ovulation here. You notice the red arrow. That causes ovulation there. And you'll notice in the bottom there is a graphic diagram that shows the development of the lining of the uterus called the endometrium. This starts to develop at the beginning of the menstrual cycle, and then if there is no pregnancy, it falls apart, bleeds out. That's what we call menses or menstruation. In many animals that would be resorbed, but in humans it is not. So the combination of FSH and LH and a bigger ratio between them causes ovulation. Progesterone is a hormone that starts to be produced by the corpus luteum after ovulation. And it supports the development of the uterine lining. And as long as progesterone is produced, the uterine lining will be maintained. If pregnancy doesn't happen, progesterone production stops. And we go through the end of the menstrual cycle and not through pregnancy. But estrogen, and estradiol is just a form of estrogen, is also produced by the developing, not only the ovary, but the developing uterus. And it helps to maintain the corpus luteum in case of pregnancy. So if the egg is fertilized, and about 50% of fertilized eggs will become implanted in the uterus, then the uterus will continue to develop, to nurture that egg and to nurture the developing fetus. And there is an interaction in the hormones between the endometrium, or the uterus, and the corpus luteum to maintain that pregnancy. And if there are hormone imbalances, then this might be a cause, that may be a cause of miscarriages, in which case it's possible that hormone therapy can help to maintain pregnancy for people that are having problems maintaining it. There are a couple of other hormones involved, and they're from the posterior part of the pituitary. One of them is oxytocin. Oxytocin is responsible for milk letdown in a reflex response, milk let down from the breast in a reflex response due to suckling on the breast. And it is the same phenomenon that we use to produce milk from cows. Doesn't last forever, so every once in a while we have to start over by rebreeding the cow and starting the hormonal cycle again. But oxytocin is responsible for milk letdown, and to continue producing milk we have to keep suckling the breast. There are limits as to how long that can last, but in some humans it has lasted more than 2 years. I think up to 5 years. I'm not sure. You can look that up if you're interested. And the other aspect of oxytocin is that it is involved in the reflex of strong uterine contractions when childbirth occurs to help expel the fetus. And finally, most recently, oxytocin has been touted as an important anti-stress hormone in women. And it is said that when conditions of stress overwhelm a woman psychologically, that it is often due to low levels of oxytocin and high levels of stress hormones. The other hormone that's important is prolactin from the posterior lobe of the pituitary, and it causes development of breasts during pregnancy. It basically develops the milk sacs, so milk production is also hormonally controlled. So prolactin is secreted by the anterior lobe of the pituitary, the one that's towards your face, not towards your back of your head, and gets into the bloodstream, and it stimulates the breasts to develop the milk glands or milk sacs. So here is a breast that doesn't have milk sacs that have developed, and the hypothalamus sort of figures that out and tells the pituitary to get with it, Jack. Submit your message, and that's what hormones are, is messages, in triplicate. Prolactin's produced, and that stimulates the tissue in the breast to develop the milk sacs. The milk sacs do not let milk down until oxytocin, in a reflex response, causes contractions that basically pump the milk through the nipple of the breast and let it down so that suckling can get it. And as long as that suckling is occurring, prolactin continues to cause milk production. So, what happens when we remove a calf from the cow? The cow hurts. The milk glands swell, the breast hurts, it gets sore, and it takes a while for it to shut down the prolactin and to basically dry up. Ultimately, it may dry up on its own anyway. But we extend the period of milk production with our milking machines and our artificial production of suckling so that we can produce milk for our grocery stores. But in the human, milk production is all about suckling and or using breast pumps to stimulate it and to collect the milk for use later. And some people do it that way. Okay, so this is the end of the hormones. It's a brief overview. Your book has a lot more. My advice is don't get too excited about a lot of the details you might read about. Hormones are very complicated. They are synergistic with each other. Hormones, what that means is that hormones interact with hormones. So there's a lot of effects researchers have found that different hormones have, and those effects probably exist, and they're probably the result of synergism with other tissues and other hormones in the body, because we only have two classes of hormones. Those that are made from cholesterol, steroids, and those that are octopeptides or straight chain proteins. And they're similar. They're all similar to each other. Some of them are made from each other, and some of them are made for each other. So they do interact, and the system in our body can be very complicated. But the major effects are the ones I talked about. The major effects are the ones you want to pay attention to if you want to basically understand the menstrual cycle and how the sex hormones affect development of all aspects that are required to produce a healthy child. Okay. Have a great week. Get ready for the final next week, and good luck. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll check my emails all the time for you.